Hello, controllers, welcome back to another video of the MATLAB course for beginners. My name is Sergio Castano and today we are going to start creating vectors in MATLAB. We know that MATLAB is the matrix laboratory and it is fully specialized in working with matrices and vectors. In this video, we are going to learn how to create vectors in MATLAB. You know that all the information we see in these videos can be found on the website, the link is in the video description. If you have not yet seen the entire course on MATLAB from scratch, here's the link so you can watch all the videos from the beginning. With that, we are going to see how we can create vectors in MATLAB. So let's start the video. If you want, you can speed up the video so that the explanation is much faster or more dynamic. Well, friends controllers, so today we are going to learn how to use vectors in MATLAB. There are two types of vectors that we can enter in more. One is known as the row vector. For example, we have an x, which is this vector where it has a row vector because we see that it is a single row where it has the number 4, 6.5 to 3, 10.5, 11. So, it is simply a vector that contains numbers, and we can also enter the one known as the column vector, which as we see here, is a vector with a single column that also has different types of numbers 2, 5, 2, 4, 6, and 2. Let's see how to enter these two types of vectors, which in the end are the same, only their representation changes, one is a row and the other is a column. So, we are here in MATLAB, we are going to enter the row vector of x first to enter vectors in more. So, normally, we create our variable x, as we have been following the course. And now to enter vectors, vectors must always be entered in brackets. So we open and close brackets. And here we enter the numbers of the vector. We always separate the space with a comma. So we see that we enter the 6 numbers that the row vector contains, and there we just have to press enter, and we see that then in x we see here in the workspace x has already been created as a vector that contains these 6 elements. So we know that each element must be separated with a comma, but plus comma also allows me to enter this vector by simply separating it with a space. So if I have the x here, I can simply replace the commas with spaces. I delete the comma, space and blank and press enter. And it is the same way to represent a row vector. So, you know that you can do it with spaces or with commas. So we are going to enter the column vector, this vector y but column. How are the columns entered? They are entered in a very similar way. We place y, open the two brackets, and here inside we are going to place the numbers of our vector. In this case, since it is a column vector, it is mandatory to separate each number with a semicolon. So, we start with 2 to go down to the next row. Yes, semicolon, -5 semicolon. So we see that the difference between a row vector and a column vector is that the row vector is separated by commas or spaces, and the column vector is the same, the numbers are placed inside the bracket, but each number must be separated by a semicolon. We press enter here and we see that the vector y has been entered into word space. We now have two vectors, a vector x which is a row vector, and a vector y which is a column vector. Another way to create vectors in more than one is, for example, when we need to make an application where the vectors have a regular interval, and in this way we can enter them much more easily. What do I mean by a regular interval? For example, we have the vector x1 which has the following interval. If we look, it is a vector that contains 6 elements, but we see that it has a regular interval. We see that each element increases by 1. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. We see then that it has a regular interval. How can we easily enter this vector in word space? We then create the vector x1, the variable x1. And one of the ways is as we entered it here manually, but since it has a regular interval, we can simply create it by opening and closing brackets. And we are going to use the colon instruction. So we simply place the first number 1, place a colon, and place the last number 6. So, plus it knows that it must create a vector that starts at 1 with increments of 1 until reaching 6. If we press enter, plus it creates the vector 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Here the brackets are not necessary. If I want, I can also create it without the brackets for this special case. And in the same way, the vector is created with an increment of 1 by 1. Let's see the following example. What happens if we have a vector x2, but now with the descending interval 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. In this case, we again create our variable x2, whether or not we put the brackets is optional. And in this case, we start with the first number, which is 6, 2 points. Since we are decreasing the value of the variable and we are decreasing it by 1 unit, we must tell MATLAB to decrease it by 1 unit. So we put -1 to tell it to decrease it by 1 unit. And finally, we put a colon again and the last value is 1. So what are we telling MATLAB here with this instruction? To start, to create a vector that starts at 6, and to decrease it by 1 until it reaches 1. If we press enter, it creates the vector x2 with 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That is another way of creating vectors with regular intervals. Let's look at a third example. What happens if we want to create a vector x3 with increments of 2, 0, 4? We see that it increases by 2. We are going to do it the same way we did here with x2. So, we create the variable x3. Again, we place the first value of the vector, in this case it is 0, 0. Then, a colon. We tell it how often it should increase or decrease. In this case, it is increment. So I'm going to tell it to increase it by 2s and to reach the number 10. Then, we press enter and it creates the variable x3, which is 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Again, you know that all these vectors that we are creating are stored here in word space. Let's see one last example. What happens if we want to decrease again, now with fractional numbers? So, 10, 9.5, 9, 8.5, 8, 7.5. In this case, it is decremental. It is done in the same way. x4, we always place the first value, colon, the interval of growth or decrease. In this case it is decreasing -5, so it is -0.5 and it reaches 7.5. If we press enter, it creates the vector x4. Another way to create vectors with regular intervals is automatically, because MATLAB has a command called link space or linear spacing. So, I wanted to calculate the space between the first value and the last value linearly. For example, we give it x5, we give it linear spacing, link space, we create the first value 1, comma, the last value 10. This is a MATLAB function. And finally, I wanted to create a vector that starts at 1, ends at 10, and find the linear spaces between those two numbers. So, I'm going to tell it to only create 3 values for me. If I press enter, then it tells me, okay, the first value is 1, the last value is 10, and the spacing between the two is 5.5. Again, we press up. If I wanted to create more values, let's tell it to create 9 values. For example, it will be the linear spacing between 9 values, 1, 2, 15, 3, 25, and so on until reaching 10. So with lin space we can create linear spacing, linearly spaced vectors. Finally, if we want to create logarithmically spaced vectors, it's the same as here, but now we're going to use long space. So, we're simply going to create a vector x6 and now instead of being linear, it's going to be logarithmic. If we tell it log up to 10,000, it will create, for example, 3 values. Sorry, log space here. The powers of 10 must be entered in the first 2 values. So, I want the first power of 10 to be 10 to the power of 1. 10 to the power of 1 is 10 and the last power to be to the power of 3. 10 to the power of 3 would be, in this case, the 1000 that I want to place. And there, yes, so he starts with the first one. 10 to the power of 1 is 10. He does a logarithmic spacing, so he says that the number that gives half because I told him to only create 3 values in that vector. So the number that gives half is 100 and the last value that I told him, 10 to the power of 3, is equal to 1000. Well, friends, that concludes our video on how to create vectors in More Call. You are now able to create any vector in MATLAB, which are widely used in engineering applications. Leave your opinion about the course in the comments, if you liked it, what you want us to see in this course, what you want us to address about MATLAB. In the next video we are going to see how to take the data that we are storing in the vectors using the MATLAB, which is going to be quite important. We are going to take the examples that we saw in this video and we are going to take specific data within those vectors. Don't forget to like it if you liked it, dislike it if you didn't, share this MATLAB beginner course with your friends and see you in the next video. Have a great time, bye! You can follow me on my social networks. Subscribe to my channel by clicking on my photo and activating the notification bell. And don't forget to watch the next one.